Hi. Today I'm going to read a essay that I had to write regarding the importance of military customs and courtesies. It was written as a punishment to me, and I'm just putting this out here to bring light to the situation within the armed forces, specifically the Army, in this case. Army Regulation 600-20, the Army Command Policy, does not define respect but uses it quite often. Throughout this regulation, the word respect is used as a verb, an action that is to be, is being, or has been done. The definition of the verb form of respect is to show consideration for, treat courteously or kindly. What defines consideration, courteous, and kind? Consideration is defined as a thought or reflection, an opinion based upon reflection. I would like to point out here that it is an opinion based upon personal reflection. Courtesy is defined as having or showing good manners, polite. Again, mannerisms are merely personal interpretations or opinions of interpersonal interactions. Kindly is defined as pleasant, mild, or agreeable. These are the definitions that will be kept in mind throughout this correspondence. The one other thing that is pertinent to being pointed out here is an excerpt from Chapter 4-1 Bravo, which states, by deference to seniors and mutual respect between senior and subordinate personnel, deference is defined as respectful submission or yielding to the judgment, opinion, will, etc. of another. In this case, another being someone who simply outranks another. Yet right after stating that, one who is subordinate should submit to the will and opinion of the senior. It states that there should be mutual respect between both parties. This alone states the issue within the military. Just because one is senior to another, the senior's opinions are of higher value and are of more concern than those of a subordinate, which defies the definition of respect. What this says to me, and many other soldiers throughout the Army, is that just because someone is senior to them, regardless of what is done, this junior soldier is always in the wrong. That is exactly what this says, especially should a soldier stand up for him or herself, their peers, their subordinates, or voice their opinions as to what happened during an interaction. I would like to bring the instance for which I am writing this report. Before this incident, there was an issue in my unit in which I defended myself against harassment from a senior non-commissioned officer. That particular action of defense took place after utilizing all resources available to me, including the Inspector General, legal, chaplain, and open door policies, none of which had any returns other than he is well within his rights as a senior. After a large defense and an appeal, I was still found guilty of several accusations written on an Article 15 that were not true. My fight against the harassment was well known through the company as well as the squadron and my support battalion. When I was approached with the first phrase coming around to this situation, which I know who you are, this felt like an attack. Since by definition respect, after being deduced, is about perception and opinion, this was disrespectful to me, especially after choosing to sit in a location that was secluded from the rest of the inhabitants of the DFAC. I was followed and called out in the middle of the DFAC in front of all the patrons there, military, civilian, and contractor alike. The reason I bring up the past situation in reference to the current situation is the reason based off the definitions of respect and the military mandate to defer simply because of someone's rank. My experiences, which make up my values and interpretations of situations, is different from the other person involved in the situation. But simply because he outranked me, my experiences and opinions of interactions are looked at as wrong, and therefore, so are the actions I took in response to this perceived action, or this perceived attack. This is to lead up to the point and purpose of this report, the importance of military customs and courtesies. Again, just like any part of Army regulation or law, this is left to interpretation. A commander or senior non-commissioned officer may say that it is necessary for the proper function of military operations. This, however, is not my interpretation of the importance of customs and courtesies. The importance lies simply in the fascist power of the senior leadership so that they are not challenged or questioned without punishment under the Uniform Code of Military Justice. The purpose is to control the masses of soldiers, all which have different views, opinions, and experiences, under the single mind of a leader who is intolerant of that and chooses only to run operations based solely on their own opinions and experiences, making the subordinates' opinions and feelings null and void in nearly all situations. To add to this, I would like to point out another excerpt from Army Regulation 600-20, Chapter 4-1 Bravo, prompt and willing execution of both the letter and the spirit of the legal orders of their lawful commanders. What defines a legal order? As far as I can tell in my research, there is no set definition of a legal order, also known as a lawful order. There are extraordinary cases where obeying certain orders are obviously illegal, such as torturing of prisoners of war. But what smaller offenses can this apply to? Therefore, with no definition of legal order, it goes back to what was previously discussed. Did it seem right to the superior? If the superior ordered it, then it obviously did. Does it matter if the subordinate does not agree with the order on more than a level than he or she just simply does not like it, such as on a basis of religious or personal values or opinions, on why the order is being made, or as to how the order is to be carried out? According to Article 90, Explanation 2, Alpha 3 of the Uniform Code of Military Justice, the order may not, without such a valid military purpose, interfere with the private rights or personal affairs. However, the dictates of a person's conscience, religion, or personal philosophy cannot justify or excuse the disobedience of an otherwise lawful order. So according to this, it doesn't matter if an order offends or presents an interpersonal conflict, as long as the superior who gave the order can claim in even the most obscure way that it was for the betterment of the mission. The importance of military customs and courtesies is simply control and protection, and the protection and satisfaction of the superior. The previous covers chapters 4-1 through 4-3. Now we'll focus on reading further into the chapter. In chapter 4-4, the regulation discusses soldier conduct. And chapter 4-4 Alpha says, ensuring the proper conduct of soldiers is a function of command. Commanders and leaders in the Army, whether on or off duty or in a leave status, will 1. Ensure all military personnel present a neat, soldierly appearance. 2. Take action consistent with Army regulation in any case where a soldier's conduct violates good order and military discipline. It has already been stated how subjective Army regulation is to interpretation, so I will not go into this again. I want to look at the phrases good order and military discipline. In the way it's used here, order is defined as a condition in which each thing is properly disposed with reference to other things and to its purpose, methodical or harmonious arrangement, another form of absolute control. According to this, it is the commander's and leader's responsibility to make sure that everyone is exactly the same, to ensure that everyone has the same views, and that those who do not are converted to the leadership's way of thinking. To top all this off, I want to point out the definition of discipline. Behavior in accordance with rules of conduct, behavior and order maintained by training and control. By this definition, discipline can be actively interchanged with the word control, where a soldier's conduct violates acceptable conformance and military control. Paragraph 4-4 Bravo through Delta and 4-5 give leadership the authority to involve not only military police but also civilian law enforcement to detain soldiers who show disrespect to the Army or any of its operations, regardless of where the action is occurring. Chapter 4-6 is a play on words. To further exercise control over subordinates, Chapter 4-6 Bravo 1 states, such measures assume the nature of training or instruction, not punishment. Corrective training should continue only until the training deficiency is overcome. Authority to use it is part of the inherent powers of command. By inherent definition, corrective training is indeed punishment. It is extra training related to a deficiency. A punishment for not conforming to a controlled fascist mind state where a junior service member's opinions, thoughts, and feelings mean nothing. For example, barracks rooms are expected to be kept in an unrealistically museum-like state. What really is the purpose of this other than simply exacting complete control over individuals and masses? Chapter 4-7 further explains the commander's ability under regulation as per disciplinary action. It states commanding officers exercise broad disciplinary powers in furtherance of their command responsibilities. Discretion, fairness, and sound judgment are essential ingredients of military justice. We see here again the use of words that refer back to the senior's opinions. Discretion, fairness, and sound judgment are all subjective words that leave open the ability of the commander to distribute disciplinary action at a whim for any type of minor infraction as long as he says he sees it as fair. Who determines what fair is? Fair actually has two definitions that can be fit in here. One being free from bias, dishonesty, or injustice, and the other being marked by favoring conditions, likely or promising. No decision is made without a bias. Therefore, this cannot be truly upheld. Just as stated previously, all regulations are written in such a vague way that leaves everything open for interpretation. Let's use my situation, for example. It was perceived that I was being disrespectful, when in all actuality I was mitigating the situation. Therefore, when the counseling was written, it was not written in a non-biased fashion or from a non-biased point of view, but from the point of view of someone who is senior to myself and has the regulation behind them that states, as a junior, I should submit myself to whatever is said, regardless of my views, beliefs, or feelings. How is this in any way fair to anyone other than the senior person in the situation? To push this point further home, Army Regulation 27-10, Chapters 3-7 and 3-8 describe what a command is and what defines being under a command. The regulation is so worded that a soldier could be punished with an Article 15 by a warrant officer, Grade 1, placed in charge of a 5-soldier detail. This gives total command and control at even the lowest of levels. In Field Manual 6-22, Army Leadership, Chapter 3-63, it says, ultimately the discussion must conclude and the team chief should accept the superior's final decision. From that point on, the team chief must support the decision and execute it to the highest of standards. Just imagine what chaos would engulf an organization if subordinates chose freely which orders to obey and which to ignore. In the end, it is important for all leaders to preserve trust and confidence in the chain of command and the collective abilities of the organization. Here it states that a subordinate must support a decision, even if the subordinate knows that it will hinder the mission or that another way will improve the mission in all aspects. Simply because someone who gets paid more says to do so, this is the exact opposite of progress, which is what the military claims to try to proclaim. Chapter 4-1 states, a person's moral and ethical qualities helps determine what is right and gives a leader motivation to do what is appropriate, regardless of the circumstances or the consequences. An informed ethical conscience consistent with the Army values. This means regardless of all the talk they give about diversity, everyone is expected to have the same values, those established by a fascist regime or destruction and dictatorship focused only on power and obedience. This states that all leaders are expected to hold the exact same ideas and to therefore pass those beliefs, values, opinions, and ideas on to the junior soldiers. How is this diverse and tolerant? Further in Chapter 4-4 it states the factors, internal and central to a leader, which make up the leader's core are Army values, empathy, warrior ethos. 2 of the 3 require a person to disregard and change their own personal core values, beliefs, and dedications and to submit to those of a military superpower. With those 2, how is empathy even possible? It is not possible, and is merely a word put on paper to look good. What this says to me is that in order to be a good soldier or leader, you must abandon who you are and become someone else. Respect as part of the Army values is defined in Chapter 4-18 as treat people as they should be treated. This is a highly subjective, especially considering the fact that it goes on in the same section to explain that the Army is more diverse than ever. This diversity means that everyone has a different idea as to how people should be treated. Values and beliefs come from how we were raised and fostered, as described in Chapter 4-5. Fact being, we are all not raised with the same values and beliefs, would seem that is an impossible feat to achieve. For example, Christians are raised to believe that pagan practitioners are devil worshippers and deserve nothing more than to be smitten by their God's wrath, and that they are on this earth to do the work of their God. This statement alone proves that this to be a completely implausible group of words intended only as a good idea of something that can never be achieved. How do they work around this? To stone these soldiers they don't agree with or like because of personal opinions, beliefs, or values within the scope of regulation, as it was put by the Inspector General when I submitted my complaint against a senior non-commissioned officer after only 3 days of investigation and a single call to my commander. This leader is in a position of power and has the ability to pick and choose what kind of work is to be done and who is to do it. So what is the importance of military customs and courtesies? It's simply put in Army Regulation 600-20, Chapter 4-2. All persons in the military service are required to strictly obey and promptly execute the legal orders of their lawful seniors. The purpose is complete and total control through enforcing and encouraging a submissive following by anyone who simply makes less money, regardless of personal feelings, beliefs, or values of the subordinate, and to provide disciplinary action for any and all persons who would stand up and voice the fascism and class-based hierarchy that has consumed and controlled the Army. Nobody does anything without some sort of selfish reason behind it. And who is it that thinks up, writes, and enacts Army regulations? It is the people with rank, people who want more power and control. If you don't submit to the will, belief, thoughts, opinions, and views of the next higher grade, you will be punished. This is the essence of the formalities of military customs and courtesies, such as not voicing an opinion or allowing someone to be pressured into something because they are junior and are told their beliefs don't matter if it gets in the way of the mission.